So I wanted us to track it from the sea to the roll, essentially here, with your guidance. So like, if I'm questioning you here, talk to me about, you mentioned before, size of the lobster. What are we looking for? Market sizes, common variants.
Yeah, 1 pound is the lowest that they're legally allowed to market, and most people don't. Most what you're going to see is a 1.5, because they want to keep the, for sustainability reasons, they don't really hold on to a lot of 1 pounders. And 1.5 is kind of the standard market size, 1.5 to 2. You can catch some. I said catch. You're not out there catching them. You can find some, 3 pounders at your local market, and you can special order larger ones if you want. And then you'll just have to wait for them to come. But generally speaking, you want to go to a place that has a tank that has them alive, that you can see them in the water. They can live for quite some time out of the water. If you're there purchasing a lobster that's not in the water, look at their sort of mouth area. And if there's a lot of bubbles there, they're foaming, they're struggling. So they're probably not in the best condition. Like when I was a seafood monger, when I would have the foamers happening, we'd pull them and we'd just cook them and we'd sell the cooked meat, right? Because they need to go soon. Try and grab ones that are lively looking. Go to places that sell them consistently, because the longer the lobster's in the tank is the longer it hasn't eaten, and they lose weight. So suddenly you're paying for a lobster, and when you bust open his shell, there's not a lot of meat in there. And you can see that sometimes when you break open a tail or a claw, and the shell is there'll be shrinkage. There's always shrinkage from cooking. But if it's a huge difference in the size of the meat that was inside the shell versus the size of the shell itself, your lobster was probably somewhat starved.
Let me pause you there for a second as well. We're talking about shells here. Tell us the difference between hard shell versus new shell.
Well, hard shells are just so all throughout their lives, lobsters molt, and that's how they grow. They have an exoskeleton, so they can't grow until they've shed a shell. Then for a while, they have what's called soft shell, just like when soft shell crabs, and then they go through a phase called paper shell, and then they have their hard shell again. So it's just a timing. The harder the shell is, the closer the lobster is to potentially molting and growing to the next size up. So to that end, the harder the shell, probably the opposite of what I just talked about at starving lobster, the more meat is inside the shell. Like you're like, wow, how did this meat fit in this shell? It's almost bursting out because it was about to burst out.
So I have here new shell or soft shell. Roughly the season would be mid-June to November.
Oh, seasons, yeah.
And the seawater, this is what I came across. It's totally all new to me. So tell me if I'm mistaken on any of this. Seawater sits in the gap between the meat and the new shell and gently seasons it from the inside. So the newer shell ones, the meat is going to be the sweetest and the most tender you're going to get. But the payoff, like you say, is size. A new shell lobster gives you less meat and more water. And the fragile new shell doesn't travel as well compared to the harder shell, which is, of course, a consideration for us when buying, transporting livestock.
Sure. It's livestock.
All right, cool. So then I think another thing.
Well, there's one more thing to look out for as a consumer. And you're probably not going to find these in your market, to be honest. You'd have to go to like a monger. You know what I mean? Not your normal grocery store. They're going to have whole lobsters. But if you go to a seafood monger, he's going to occasionally get ones that are missing an arm or, frankly, missing both arms. They're typically cheaper by the pound, and there's good value there. They're called culls when they're missing one of their arms. They fight, they battle, whatever. They're out there living their Viking.
We have a different name in the UK, but you told me off last time I said it, so I'm not going to repeat it.
Wait, what was it? You did tell me. What was it called?
We would order them.
Pistols.
No, we would order them from our seafood purveyors as crippled lobsters.
Crippled, that's right.
And it's a very true to the meaning of the word. It's true. But yeah, I think there are some negative connotations there these days. Actually, one of the only time where I have cooked lobster for my family, we went out and bought those, what do you call them? Culls?
Cull, yeah.
We bought culls and we served them by the sea. Very nice.
Yeah, you can get culls, and then there's bullets. They're missing both arms.
Bullets. Okay, very cool. The next one that I think is the thing that people aren't sure about. There's some myths surrounding it. People don't know what to do. That is once you're home with this live product, how do you ethically and how should you kill and dispatch the creature when cooking?
Well, so that's the word you used both. But so I only use one word, right? It's dispatching. We're dispatching all these animals, whether it's this lobster or a chicken or a goat or what have you, they're going into service for us. And there's a new UK law that says you can no longer cook. Restaurants, and certainly they're not going to come into your home, but restaurants are now having to abide. You can no longer cook them from live.
I think that was even in place when I was.
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was relatively new. I feel like I just read about it, but maybe during research for this.
I mean, whenever any association I've ever had with lobster was like, you're not supposed to do that.
Sure.
So, and maybe it wasn't, written into law, but it was standard practice and frowned upon for sure.
Sure. So, the most sort of humane way is to lay the animal down, depending on your dominant hand, with the head facing your dominant hand. You'll see that there's like this little cross on the back of the what we would consider the head. If you pinpoint your knife into that and then rock it forward, basically bifurcating his head in half, his or her, this is said to dispatch them instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the most humane way to go.
One thing you can do as well, if you're at home and if you're not too familiar with all of this, this is a creature, it's moving around. They will have rubber bands on their claws.
Oh yeah, remove those before cooking.
Mm-hmm. You can put it in the freezer for 15 to 30 minutes and it's just going to relax that and make things a lot more calm before you're working.
Sure.
For those people the other common method beforehand, like you said, right, is head first directly into a screaming hot pan of water. Mm-hmm. And I say screaming because a lot of people thought that was the lobster screaming when it went in. It makes a noise that is steam evaporating and leaving the shell. Yeah,
they have no vocal cords. But I would reiterate, take that rubber band off. I never understood, and I worked for chefs who would argue with me about this. But if that thing is on the shell and the shells are porous, which they are, then I can taste the rubber in the claw. Get the rubber band off there. Mm-hmm. I used to work with another chef who would cook his asparagus still banded together.
What?
I'm like, bro.
Ugh.
Yeah.
All right, so that's dispatching.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's talk about just cooking lobster now because, we mentioned a few times, screaming hot pan of water. People think that that's the way to go. Certainly it is a way to cook them, but I know from a brief discussion, both of us are not in that camp.
No. I think most of my young life, we certainly boiled seafood all the time. But I think if you're having lobster, you're better served by steaming it. Mm-hmm. The boiling the lobster is going to kind of waterlog it. Steaming will not do that. I mean, that's really the difference. I don't want to dilute the flavor of the lobster by plunging it into a depth of boiling water when I can just steam it. Also, steaming method is much quicker, not necessarily for the cooking time, but for the getting to temperature time. Mm-hmm. Right, I can have just a couple of inches of liquid in the bottom of my brazier pan or whatever with a rack in there, so that I can just get the steam.
You want to cook it to around 140 degrees Fahrenheit in the tail. After that, it's going to very quickly turn rubbery and dry.
Yeah, you're really cutting it close there. 135, 140, because once you hit 145, you're starting to get that bounce that's not as delightful.
But
I'm still going to eat it.
Yeah. The other thing for us to note here, though, as well, is next to however you're cooking it, you want a big old bath of ice water so you can immediately shock it.
Yeah.
Which does make it difficult if you're serving it warm, but we don't need to for this or if you're trying to serve it hot because,
Well, I'm going to pick up the warm one. Pick up always means like we've got all of our prep ready and now it's time to get to a place of eating. I'm going to pick up the warm one by tossing it into a warm bath of the butter.
Drawn butter?
Drawn butter.
Not melted.
Sure. Yeah, not melted. Melted butter still has all the milk fats in there. Clarified/drawn, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So definitely start paying very close attention at around 130 and start being ready to pull, like you said, 135, no more than 140.
Yeah, and there's other ways to do lobster as well. We could certainly sous vide this guy. If you got the patience for that. And then at restaurants, we butter poach. So we're poaching not in boiling water or poaching level water. We're not steaming. We're literally cooking it in the butter that we're probably going to serve it with later anyway. So now, as time goes on, and I cook numerous lobsters in that butter is lobster butter.
Solera.